Let's do this. Let's transition and talk a little bit about unemployment on marginalized publics. Now, we have to do this again because this is, again, in this report, there's unbelievable results. Unemployment for Hispanics hit a brand new record, and the record now is 3.9%. And since they've been keeping those stats in the 1970s, we've never seen the number that low. And for African Americans, this month, the number was 5.5%. That's the same exact one that was last month at 5.5%, which established a brand new record. And so, the previous record was also set under this administration. So this is clearly not an aberration. It seems to be a structural thing. Let's play clip number 3.
After a bump and a dip, the unemployment rate reached a new record low. In May of 2018, it was 5.9%, but it has been trending upward since then. It was back to 7% in February, erasing all gains over the last 12 months. Trump continually takes credit for a turnaround that has started before he took office. The black unemployment rate was only briefly the lowest recorded and has been trending up ever since. He earns 3 Pinocchios.
3 Pinocchios is in how much he's lied, I assume.
That was a Washington Post, quote-unquote, fact-checker that was still online even yesterday. And it's rather interesting because what it's talking about is when Trump goes around claiming that the African-American unemployment rate is low, they when this first started happening, they wanted to give him Pinocchios and say that he was lying. Now, the one thing that I want to notice about that is that in that clip, the person talks, this was earlier on in his administration, it talks about how when the first record was established, 5.9%, they tried to characterize it as only being a blip. And you'll notice that there are 2 narratives that you heard there. Oh, it was going to fall anyway, and now it's going back up because it had gone back up to 7. Well, keep in mind then what happened afterward is that rate went down into the 6s, it went down into the 5s, and then it continued to break record after record, and we have 2 months in a row now at 5.5. And the very interesting thing that I want to say here about this is that when you see those kinds of Pinocchio reports, I want you to understand it's not a issue of checking facts, it's political perception. If I say to you this, if I say to you, it would have dropped anyway, that's not a fact. That's a thesis. The counter thesis is as follows, that the economy and the Obama administration in the last year, in September, in 2016 rather, the whole year was only growing at 1.6%. And that, in fact, what happened is you had this corporate tax rate, right, the deregulation, the pushing of coal, oil, and gas, and everything that these people were doing, and that had a stimulative effect, which everyone knows it did. You had 5 quarters of good growth. You had 3% growth.
Right.
And you still are chugging along today a lot better than what Europe is doing. So it's definitely, it's not a fact that it just would have happened. It's a political perception. And it's funny that Washington Post is going out there giving Pinocchios. And notice how at the end of that supposed fact check, there's 2 narratives. She says it would have fallen anyway, and now it's going back up. Well, what's that narrative? Well, Trump's in there and it's going back up. If it's going back up, you could say, well, it would have gone back up anyway. The way they,
right.
So it's actually interesting.
So they introduced narratives in their own thesis rather than facts to contradict what he was saying.
Right. I mean, I want you to understand it's not a fact check. It's what them giving them their political perception, which is different from Trump having a different political perception. That's what's going on. So the reason why I bring this up is for 2 reasons. Number one, it's clear that these unemployment numbers really are good, and they're good across the board, and we're going to have to watch and see how that's going to play in the election. But the other reason why I want to bring it up is if it's possible to put picture number 4 up on the screen, at least for the people watching the video, is the Washington Post appears to have gotten the message because they ran a story on September 9th that indicates that for the first time, most new working age hires in the U.S. are people of color. And they actually were championing that. They said for the first time, most new hires of prime working age 25 to 54 are people of color, according to a Washington Post analysis of data and the Labor Department collected in the 1970s. So this is rather interesting. We'll put these pictures up. The people watching the video can see them. So there is now this understanding that these broad rates really are really good right now.